So Huawei has phones in every category: mid-range, budget and flagship. And recently they have released two new phones and Huawei Y7 Pro 2019 is one of them. It is a refresh to the Y7 Pro 2018, and one thing I'll say right now is that it looks pretty premium for a budget phone. It goes for like 18,000 rupees, but it certainly looks more expensive. Well, I've used the phone for a while now and this is my full review of the Huawei Y7 Pro 2019. When you look at this phone for the very first time, it's very similar to the Nova series and is rather very different from the Y7 Pro 2018. It has the dewdrop notch on the front, similar glass-like finish on the back, dual rear cameras with AI and a single front camera. The size is bigger as well compared to the Y7 Pro 2018. The build of this phone is really impressive. The back looks like glass, but it's actually plastic, and the phone will look absolutely beautiful when it's new, but it will catch some smudges after using it for a long time, so you should definitely use a case with this thing. Now on the front, it has the U-style notch with slim borders all around the screen, but the chain is slightly thick. However, it's not an eyesore. The SIM tray can accommodate 2 Nano-sim cards and a microSD up to 512 GB, which uses the SIM 2 slot. The speaker, 3.5mm headphone jack and a USB charging port are all at the bottom. The volume and power buttons are at a good position on the right, and the buttons do feel clicky and rigid. And there's no fingerprint sensor on this thing, so it might be a turn-off for some people out there. Well, you have the face unlock and it's pretty quick under good lighting, and it works quite good in dark as well, so you really won't have the problem with the face unlock unless it's too dark. There's a raise to wake option as well, so it gets really easy to use face unlock and it feels very intuitive as well. Now the sleek frame of the Y7 Pro 2019 also houses a 6.26 inches IPS LCD display with a screen resolution of 720 by 1520. This gives the Y7 Pro 2019 a pixel density of 269 with the aspect ratio of 19:9. And I have to say, I enjoy the screen. Watching shows on Netflix and YouTube was pretty good. Now even though it's only a HD display, you won't really feel that big of a difference from a full HD display. And those reduced bezels certainly helps to achieve more immersive content viewing. And the LCD panel used on the Y7 Pro 2019 is also a good one. It's not exceptional, but the colors and viewing angles are decent. There are no color shift issues, it's bright enough, and I didn't have any issues with the display on outdoors as well. Onto the specs, it's a budget entry-level specification. We get the Qualcomm Snapdragon 450 chipset, 3 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of internal storage. It's not the best spec out there, but it does a fine job as a budget smartphone. Opening apps, switching between multiple apps is good enough, even though it's not the smoothest experience. There were no major lags as such. Most of the time I use YouTube, Instagram and Messenger at the same time, and I didn't have any issues while doing so. Games run decent on Y7 Pro 2019 as well. I played H1 Legends and it runs fine at default settings. You cannot play this game at high settings though. And I also played SimCity as well, and the game ran decent, but I have to say it was not the smoothest experience. Now on to more impressive feature of the Huawei Y7 Pro 2019, its huge 4000 mAh battery. The battery will last you a day easily even on heavy uses, and it could even last you almost 2 days if you're an average user. Now onto the camera, you've got 13 megapixel plus 2 megapixel dual rear camera setup on the rear and a single 16 megapixel camera on the front. Rear camera's real life performance is decent for a budget smartphone. Images on daylight turn out pretty good. There's right amount of detail and exposure. The dynamic range is also quite balanced, though sometimes the highlights and shadows are not handled well enough under harsh lighting conditions. As for the camera modes, you get standard photo mode, aperture mode, SDR, Pro mode, but there is no dedicated portrait mode in this phone. Well, the rear camera uses AI and it does detect the scene as a portrait mode when you're trying to capture the image of a person. Now, as with the previous Huawei phones, I'm not a big fan of AI, but this phone has to be one of the most affordable smartphones with AI-enabled camera. And I like the AI almost most of the times when I was using this phone. The AI seemed to be helping, especially during night time. The night images with AI were much better than the images without the AI. Now, I've done a full review of this phone as well, so if you want to know more about it, the pop-up should be right up there. Now as for the videos, you can capture up to 1080p 30 fps and there are no sort of stabilization mentioned. So yes, the videos are not that great, but it's good enough for social media purposes. Now talking about the front camera, I like the front camera more than the rear camera. There is no HDR Pro mode which is available on the Nova 3i, but the picture with bright background were better than what I expected it to be. Usually selfies with bright background tend to get washed out, but this one did a pretty decent job. Now, out of the software side of things, it is running on Android Oreo on top of EMUI. Now, I won't talk about the EMUI because it's same as the other previous Nova and Y series phones. There's not much sales. So watch our reviews of other Y phones if you're really interested. So at last, the Huawei Y7 Pro 2019 is just another budget phone from Huawei, which looks similar to their more premium lineup, the Nova series rather than the Y series. The phone looks good, feels good and performs just decent. But obviously there are other phones with better performance, but overall the Y7 Pro 2019 is a good phone for the price. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys liked it, and as always, like if you liked it, subscribe to our channel for further contents like this. Also hit that bell icon to get notifications. Until next time, namaste.